welcome you to the center. I want to give you a little rundown about what we do here at the center because I think this directly relates to the projects that happen here. It's a pretty special place. We have visiting artists here, which I think a lot of you are aware of because that's our very close public component to our program, but we also fund larger projects through fellowships. Mike Smith and the Center for Urban Pedagogy are doing a very big program here. But we also have affiliates who are artists who work within these studios here. And this year we started our first graduate affiliate program, and Azra is one of our graduate affiliates along with Tad Hirsch. What we're looking for in a graduate affiliate is that there are artists being educated here at MIT in visual and Master in Visual Sciences, but the artists that we have working here as graduate affiliates are students who are in other areas who self-identify as artists. And so we thought it would be important to bring them here into the center so that they could be doing their work with the help of the center staff, and then also this space here at this center would become a place where ideas can mix between the different kinds of disciplines at MIT as well as the artists can have a support structure. And through this kind of program, the Lost Highways Expedition has found a small program here, or a small home here because of Azra. In the past months, Kyong has been working here developing the project that began last year when Marietta Tsepodrit, CADS's first senior fellow, was in residence. From her workshop, she organized through CADS New Maps of Europe. This project took root in the minds of her students and colleagues and has grown to include a wide international collaborative group while retaining its hub here at CADS. When founding our graduate program, we hope for projects like these to develop, where thinking across disciplines, but with inventive artistic approaches could be centered here. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Azra and Kyong. Azra, I'm going to give the bio now, the standard practice. Azra Aksamija is an artist and architect based here in Cambridge and a PhD candidate in Aga Khan Program for Islamic Architecture in the Department of History, Theory, and Criticism of Art and Architecture at MIT. Born in Sarajevo, she received a degree in architecture at the Technical University of Graz, Austria, and received her master's in architecture from Princeton University. Her work has been widely published and exhibited in venues such as the Generali Foundation in Vienna, the Biennial in Valencia, the Berlin Art Fair, the Graz Biennial of Media and Architecture, and the Gallery of Contemporary Art in Leipzig, and the Liverpool Biennial. She is currently researching a dissertation on contemporary Islamic architecture in post-war Bosnia and Herzegovina and the place of Islam in Western Europe and in the United States. And Kyong is the founder of Storefront for Art and Architecture New York and the International Center for Urban Ecology in Detroit. He's the curator of Images of the Future, the Architecture of a New Geography at the Gwangju Biennial in Korea, and co-curator and artist for Berlin-based Shrinking Cities. A Loeb Fellow at Harvard in 1996 through 97. He was visiting chair in urbanism at the University of Detroit Mercy School of Architecture in 2000 and 2001. He's also the editor of Urban Ecology, Detroit and Beyond, which is at the MIT Press Bookstore. And I'm really glad that both of them have been here. It's been exciting to see the activity happen. And I'll allow Azra and Kyong to introduce their project to you. And I also welcome you, if you're interested in this project, that you can contact me here at the Center for Advanced Visual Studies, as well as these two, and we can get you more involved. So thank you very much to you guys.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Because I cannot hear. I'm hearing myself here. It's a pleasure to be here again. Actually, in the course of the same project, the Lost Highway Expedition. The first time I was here at CABS with Marietta Tsepodrit because at that time we were at the beginning of starting of our project, which I can tell you more in detail. We're going to tell you later. But the general idea of the project, the Lost Highway, which is the first part of a three-stage project called Europe Lost and Found, the Lost Highway is a first event that we try to create. You might think that we're a little bit idealistic, but maybe you will understand more further later, is that temporary society, so that it would not be, it could be experimental without threatening the other society. Also, I think the society is more temporary than ever, and this is the reason why we project ourselves in that fashion. The other idea that we had was the notion of moving cities, that we could create a city out of our participants in Lost Highway that geographically enlarged enough itself to occupy a city, actually 9 cities in this case, and that we are affirming and studying the condition of a moving city in contemporary society. Then we also kind of fashion idea about somewhat functioning as nomadic universities. This is a practical question. One is that we think that we are interested, and they would be interested also, that universities will eventually participate in this project and engage in a classroom, workshop, or a studio that is learning basically from moving itself through territories and spaces. So it's a kind of antidote to the notion of educational institution based on one location and attracting the students. Instead, the educational institution goes to various locations and attracts itself to a place for educating itself. Then we had idea about being stateless state. And this is something that is recognizing dramatic transition of the idea of the state's physical and constitutional and representation of the state. We're very much interested on this project as well. So we could go now to Azra. She can explain more about the Lost Highway expedition itself. So nice.
Little improvisation. Okay, thank you very much for coming, and thanks to CAVS for organizing this event. We will be presenting a project in process, and with these explanations, we want to invite you actually to participate in this expedition that is taking place in August, this August. We will present first, what the term Lost Highway means, what is this highway, where we are going to be moving, a little bit of the project background, how this process started and how it is continuing to develop, and where you can dock on. Then we'll go over some issues that we have been dealing in our project and that framed our interest so far and could be expanded by you, of course. And then we will show some of the project logistics. The Lost Highway, before I start, these are the slides from Kyong and Mariette's travel. When was this?
It was from Christmas to through New Year of 2004 to 2005. 4 weeks period. We traveled through 12 cities together.
Basically, they did the first route on this highway. The Lost Highway is the fictional name for the old road made in ex-Yugoslavia to connect major cities of its republics. It connected Ljubljana, Zagreb, Beograd, and Skopje. The road was made in the 60s in the massive voluntary campaign of the peoples of all nationalities that constituted Yugoslavia. The highway was named according to the most important state parole, brotherhood and unity, the highway of brotherhood and unity. It is not accidental that this ideological name signified the connection line among different nations. Communist Yugoslavia was itself ideological construction created after the Second World War to unify the nations that had unresolved history of mutual conflicts. As an ideology, Yugoslav communism believed that it has the capacity to overcome national divisions in the eternal run toward universal wellness. However, communist eternity was brutally shortened during the 90s. The collapse of utopian system stripped down the concept of national unification. Old national conflicts were awakening up for the new bloodshed war. Beside the establishment of independent states, the war scored several hundred thousands of killed and 1 million refugees. Yugoslavia was buried violently for the long. Yet the highway survived and became even more improved. After the war, new tracks and services were added according to European Union standards. Today, this highway looks like any other European highway. It is comfortable and without local identity. The ideological meaning that once marked the belief of the people that were building it had been lost forever. This highway of post-brotherhood and non-unity today only functions as a linear mechanism in the framework of the so-called West Balkan, a term invented only recently by the European Union. Just as the Lost Highway, the West Balkan is a territory without content. It is a political determination that was defined from the outside, aiming to address ruined and chaotic agglomeration of unsettled nations with common history. For these nations, the term West Balkan is not understood in terms of its interconnections, but rather as a set of separate obligations toward European institutions. Following the line of Lost Highway through the unknown territory of contemporary and future meanings of West Balkan, participants of the Lost Highway expedition will explore new modes of linking different entities. Just like any other expedition, the Lost Highway is not determined, and it is also not predictable. However, the data possibly found on the highway could present an interesting matter, not only for the region, but also for European Union, that is currently suffering the unsuccessfulness of its concept of integration. At the end, the expedition participants will also tackle the question of how to construct a concept of a better life anywhere in a non-utopian time and without ideological illusions. Lose yourself in the Balkans and find yourself in Europe. This expedition motto refers to our voyage in the unknown territories of the future of Europe. At the same time, this future is not only to be found, but also to be constructed. And this is what we would like you to do. So.
We also want, I forgot to mention that we want to use this to have a dialogue with you afterwards and get some ideas and criticism from our project, because we're developing this constantly and still, have a lot of questions, and some of our assumption probably needs to be corrected or enriched at least. So the whole initial idea of Lost Highway was actually brought first by a group called School Missing Studies, SMS, which is actually based in New York. As a group known more architecture, and also based in Belgrade with a group there also called SMS around School of Architecture at the University, Faculty of Architecture at the University of Belgrade. We have intention of doing this. What three-phase would be the first phase would be Balkanization, and then the next would be the idea of questioning about the impact and the negotiation of Europeanization. And then in the end, we would like to see if this could be illustrated somehow visually in some kind of a form of, about the future that we could possibly imagine. Each project will build the base for the next one. And like the Lost Highway, the whole project is based on the movement from one place to another, from one idea to another, and one chapter to another. So this narrative-based work, I think, is a very important part for us. But however, at each stage, we had planned to realize an expedition, and exhibitions and publication, other things that are very typical to cultural production. So I would just maybe skip some of these things a little bit so we can move on maybe. After that, as we mentioned, I was mentioned before, myself and Maria Teresa Poterec, we took a 4-week trip at Christmas 2004 to, I think it was like 24th of January. And since that, first thing that happened was actually here at CAVS. When she was invited as a fellow here, and worked together with Azra Aksamija, and what's it called, independent seminar project called the New Map of Europe, Mapping a Balkanized Society, as an independent study seminar. And the idea was the examination of contemporary Balkan cities as moving cities, cities of extremes. The seminar aimed to take these cities out of their territorial grounding and place them in a larger, more global perspectives. The shattering of state and the huge population shift that marked the Balkan in the 1990s were seen as microcosm of changes to come in Europe, as well as perhaps in the 20th century included. That's probably the reason why that Europe has always been fascinated about the Balkan, among other reasons. Seminar participants explored contemporary mapping practices and developed their own dynamic mapping projects, which reflected on contemporary culture while allowing for understanding of populations and cities, regions in more or less in temporal terms. My apology that I don't have visual material from this seminar to be shown here right now. The second seminar was somewhere else, and it was called Balkanization from Metaphor to Architectural Strategy, which was collaborative exchange between, as I mentioned before, SMM groups taking place at the Graduate School of Architecture at Pratt, organized by Srđan Jovanović, Vice, and the Faculty of Architecture at University of Belgrade, led by Ivan Kučina. They were engaged in researching, reading, mapping an array of contemporary sources related to war architecture strategies. Specific focuses were placed in recent war in the Balkan and further attempt to transfer its strategies of progressively dividing territories and what kind of effect that it could have in planning and architectural realms. Since then, the project was then began to be called Europe Lost and Found, and with the support of Slovenian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Centrala Foundation for Future Cities was founded in Rotterdam. And now we're going back into the beginning of the slides. And basically, we needed to create in order to build the infrastructure for the project. And then out of that, we have been working with 8 people, myself, Azra, Catherine Carl, Anna Stokic, Ivan Kučina, Mark Nealon, of course, Maria Teresa, and Srđan. Okay. We have plans to, we have come to an agreement with the exhibition in the result of the Lost Highway. First at Württembergischer Kunstverein in Stuttgart, February, March to 2007, and followed by exhibitions at Moderna Galleria and Skuc in Ljubljana, May through June 2007. Okay, sorry. I can hear myself very well because I'm feeding off my own microphone. Okay.
I have to
All right. Yeah. Then I'm sorry to bore you about this kind of technical things, but I just want to tell you that we've been doing a lot of stuff to get it organized. The idea that it would the second time.
There you go.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Then we have this idea, we're still developing this project, right? Yeah, and so we want to get into discussion soon, I hope, is that we want to, the second stage, we want to also create another expedition, but it would be based on the peripheral cities of EU mainly. And we have already made contacts in Barcelona, Marseille, Naples, Rotterdam, and Belfast. And hopefully that we can be so ambitious and ideological that we could go on to Budapest, Bucharest, Saloniki, Istanbul, why not? Beirut, Cairo, Tangier, all these places. Sure, right? Why? Because Europe, as some people have, famous people have claimed, there is no state in Europe. Europe cannot define itself. And Bosnia is a metaphor for entire Europe, right? So while it is trying to construct its own self-identity and trying to make itself distinct from the others that is increasingly unwilling to accept, in fact, very willing to expel them, that it is actually being defined by the others already. So we are very interested in kind of surrounding the fortress Europe and attack it from the outside, so to speak, and to really try to redefine what would be the social, cultural, economic geography of Europe in the future. I think a lot of people are very interested in this perspective. So for the operation of Lost Highway, we were very delighted to get interest and commitment from various organizations in each of the cities, such as Scouts in Ljubljana, MAMA, Platforma 981, VHV in Zagreb, KUDA in Novi Sad, Prelom Collective and School of Missing Studies in Belgrade, Missing Identity in Pristina, Press for Exit in Skopje, and Proba in Sarajevo. So that's my end of administrative presentation. Thank you.
Okay. So.
Now I have to start the PowerPoint, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now we will show some of the issues that have fed into this project so far. One is the definition so far of the term of Balkanization as it came out from Srđan Jovanović and Ivan Kučina's seminar. If globalization stands for the increasing interconnectedness of people and places through converging processes of economic, political, and cultural exchange, then the term Balkanization can be understood as its counteraction. Perceived as a centrifugal force that undermines or divides the state, Balkanization recoils the unity and the power, or the centripetal forces of shared historical legacy, and the unitary economic system. Where am I? Sorry. The term Balkanization can be understood as the counteraction of globalization. Perceived as a centrifugal force that undermines and divides the state, Balkanization recoils the centripetal forces of shared historical legacy and the unitary economic system that augment political unity and the power of the nation-state. Balkanization breeds ethnic nationalism that fuels identity politics in the absence of real democratization. Originating from the Balkan region that is historically contested through periodical power shifts of different empires, Balkanization emerged as a form of micronationalism, or ethnic, linguistic, cultural, and/or religious separatism, and a major source of geopolitical tension today. However, its negative image has been tempered with other interpretations, such as the new forms of religious freedom or increased democratization that stimulates the growth of group identities with agendas of self-rule from below. Okay, I will come to this later, but I will show you this best through some examples. I think we can start now. The recent history of the Western Balkans makes nationalist motivations in building strategies as understandable to some extent, as they were predominantly fueled by the horrific experiences from the recent war. This is a photograph by the Bosnian artist Tarik Samarah from Srebrenica, documenting the genocide or part of the genocide performed here on over 10,000 Bosnian men and boys. With the end of the communist era, the collapse of Tito's Yugoslavia released nationalist extremism that culminated in a brutal conflict among its former federal republics. And its violent conflict or escalation first affected Slovenia, then Croatia, then Bosnia and Herzegovina, and finally Kosovo. In Bosnia, for instance, the genocide performed on Bosnian Muslims and by Bosnian Croats and Bosnian Serbs started in 1992, right after Bosnia's sovereignty as a state was internationally recognized. Over 2,500 people, 250,000 people were killed on all sides. A greater number was injured. War also caused more than 2 million refugees, tens of thousands of raped women and girls, and over 3,000 destroyed architectural monuments. Next one, please. The controversial Dayton Peace Agreement was then signed in December 1995, and it finally brought end to the displacement of refugees, ethnic cleansing, concentration camps, mass rapes, and other violations of human rights. Although the end of fighting was welcomed by the most, a compromise made for the peace divided the country into two entities, the Federation of Bosniaks and Croats and the Republic of Srpska, thus effectively legitimizing the new brutally constructed political and demographic landscape. This internal political boundary is not the only one that is tearing the Bosnian state apart and creating the difficulties of the peaceful coexistence between the two entities. The present conflict is rendered in the Bosnian demographic structure. When you look at these maps from before and after the war, you see the significant difference of fragmented territories with a high mixture where there was no more than 40% of majority in one little territory. And after the war, the territories became highly consolidated with 90% majorities that are ethnically clean and consolidated. Following this massive destruction of the built environment during the war and considering this demographic structure, Bosnia's religious space is now being modified, and this is visible in the mushrooming phenomenon of religious architecture, where mosques and churches are now control or signifying territorial dominance. Next, please. Within this phenomenon, there is competitiveness for visibility. This is an Orthodox church in Jezero. It is not finished nor yet in use, but next, please. You see that the church tower was given the priority in completion. Next. And such expression of territorial dominance even more explicit in the city of Mostar, where Croats have put a Catholic cross on the top of the hill, and whose nightly illumination and gigantic size aim for remote and perpetual presence.
Also in Skopje too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the city itself, you see the height of this oversized church tower. Next. This church tower was destroyed in the war, and the Croats actually hurried up with the reconstruction of it before it was agreed with the rest of the city and the protection of monuments, and to build it, more with a more extreme height. This height of this tower was only limited by a couple of meters by the height of the Gothic cathedral in Zagreb, which it didn't dare to supersede. Next one. Muslims, on the other side, react in Mostar to this with another kind of monumentality, referencing their regional ancestry of the Ottomans, but enhancing it with new, more monumental features. While these two minarets originally symbolized royal patronage, this historical reference is here missing, but it became replicated in another regions on also monumental scale. Next one. Like this mosque in Ustikolina, it's a little village on a boundary to a Republic of Srpska. This was the highest minaret in Europe, 60 meters, informally built instead of reconstructing the old one, and the new race, the main mufti of Bosnia ordered the destruction of this minaret because the Serbs were irritated by this overheight. Next one. Another example from Krajina. This is a region that was not affected by destruction of monuments. The new mosque was literally built in the courtyard of the old one, and that not because more space was needed. This trend for architectural display of religious dominance shows the infiltration of political boundaries or politics into space and architecture, and signifying, next one, territorial control. Mosques and churches have replaced the national flags that fulfilled this purpose right after the war. They are solidified flags, and they reflect in the instrumental role of the country's religious institutions in its spatial politics. Sadly, mosques and churches often act as spatial instruments for continuation of the war in the time of peace. Next one, please. And then, the tempering of the negative images of Balkanizations with these new forms of religious freedom and the growth of group identities can be seen in examples like this, where this community, these are all survivors of a concentration camp from the village of Srednje, that were organized in a sort of working action and are rebuilding their mosque. They are rebuilding their community. They literally came with 2 plastic bags when they survived, and now they are, constructing this with their own hands. Yeah, I think now we'll go to you.
You wanted to say about? Oh, okay. This is an image of Mamutica, which is the largest housing block to house 10,000 residents in Novi Zagreb, which is a population of about 200,000. You see that was built outside of Zagreb, across the river from the old city, as a part of Yugoslav's national housing project. But since the so-called the fragmentation of Yugoslavia. Fragmentation does not only happen in the political level, geopolitical level, but it also took place in all aspects of life there, obviously economic as well. But it's the society, the state, if you will, basically pixelized. And that the state, for different in terms of what which republic that you are at, they have a different kind of the length or the depth of dispowering of the state, and the state was basically operated by the people themselves, so to speak. So you have this idea, you get the feeling about state has diminished itself to, let's say, a size of a family, a clan, or even individuals. So what you get in the end is no longer these kind of large projects and large architecture or planning. You get small things that we like to call as urban villas. For example, these that are on the road from, let's say, Skopje into Pristina, because that's the only way you can get in internationally, and you see these popped up everywhere. In Pristina, Skopje and is major proponent of these kind of architecture. They are expressing their own eclectic individuality without the state controlling them, and mixing Orientalism and modernism and historical style of any choice they like. Then hybridization of multiple style occurs many times, and it loses authentic style, reflects the loss of cultural memories through, let's say, war or the disappearance of a state or identity of a larger body of state like Yugoslavia. Okay. One of the most interesting idea of transition, reconstruction, or even you might say genesis, would be not this one. You see, I'm sorry, I missed a lot of slides here. This one, let me skip a little bit. This was a very controversial project. It's quite old now. I think it's already, this picture is 10 years old, but it's a house two brothers built on top of another building in center of Belgrade near the main bus station. So their illegal constructions are everywhere further you go down south. I was told that one time during the war period, there was 300,000 illegal businesses in Belgrade alone, meaning counting cars, open trunks, cloths on the street, sidewalk and so forth. And so you have this kind of a certain aspect of changing of the balance of the state and citizens and so forth. And I think this is one of the main and perhaps interesting thing that we would like to explore with you at the Lost Highway. Here is a world famous mayor, the most mayor of the year in Europe. The former artist, former Minister of Culture, Mayor Edi Rama, has come up with this idea of, due to low budget of the, you can imagine Albania, that he started to produce campaign to paint city buildings. And it became very popular, and of course with the Tirana Biennale, that later artists themselves were invited to design facades for these things as well. But we also think that in some ways that the European Union as well is also experiencing some aspect of this, particularly I think in like somewhat like the idea of nostalgia, a return, in my opinion, to the bourgeois society, This example is in the region of Ancona area in the eastern coast of Italy, where you have modernism is dead, both in the east and west. And here was a housing project that was favored, but now that Italians leave these high rises that are built in the countries just outside of town, and they like to live in these new, brand new 600-year-old Renaissance apartments or urban villas, so to speak. And then the high rises are basically occupied by immigrants, mostly from North Africa. Okay. Should I read any of these, or we just go?
Yeah, we'll just
go.
go over them.
There's a lot of stuff. One of the great examples of this kind of fragmentations or pixelization in the Europe itself, or let's say islanding, so to speak, is this new development called Havelai in the Netherlands, near a city called Den Bosch, which Mariettis and I worked together also on this project. Because the European cities are, like the American cities before, are currently experiencing migration of residents from urban to rural, suburbanization of European cities, which can be clearly seen in the Netherlands because like a project like Wienek's famous project in the 15 years, basically you could come to an end, say, that led to suburbanization of Dutch middle class, leaving the cities to the immigrants. Sounds very familiar, like here. So you have cities like Den Haag and Rotterdam now 50% non-Dutch. And they're also predicted by year 2100 that only 25% of the population in Netherlands would be ethnically, racially Dutch. So it brings in the question of the relation between the history and cultural identity, the authority that is attached to the land. That would become more difficult to defend. And these are another conditions that we're very interested in. And that's why you see the Lost Highway talks a lot about temporary, stateless, moving, and etc. And I think that basically we could now go into the talk more about the Lost Highway itself and the logistics and how we see that it could possibly operate. Sorry.
Okay, now we should jump into each
other.
other.
Yeah, we should, because we
Thank
now
you, Midori
already...
Taki, for this map. Midori is also a recent graduate from the School of Architecture who is collaborating with us on this project. In terms of travel, this project should be self-organized, self-funded, and what else?
Self-help project.
Self-help. You don't have to travel or stay together. Participants can enter or exit the expedition at any point. There is this timeline, a sequence of events that is planned in a sequence of 2 days. If you would go through each city, you would be, let's say, 2 days in one city and 1 day is planned for a travel in between. It starts from Ljubljana, goes Zagreb, Novi Sad, Belgrade, Pristina, Skopje, Tirana, Podgorica, and then ends in Sarajevo. But you can make the connections through.
Yeah, the dotted, I was just going to say, the dotted line is a rough articulation of the highway of brotherhood and unity.
Where the actual highway actually is. We are now working currently on a web page that will provide a networking system for people to organize the stay, and it will give the information also for the travel, car sharing systems, and so on. Events happening in the cities may include guided tours, presentations, different forums, and then different forms of collaborations in the host cities, but also, participants are invited to contact and initiate projects with the individual cities and get themselves involved. Yeah.
Well, basically, we are continually developing in the way that mentioned before, in a very narrative from one to another, right? So we say this framework that, like one thing that she mentioned, Azra mentioned, is that you don't have to follow this the way that we have laid out. Right? You can, like, let's say, start from Novi Sad early, and then see the 5th and 6th of events that we program, and then you decide that you don't want to go other places. You go to Podgorica and go through the middle of the territory to, let's say, experience not cities but the peripheral areas. Okay, for example, right? And join the group later, for example. So that is, and also that we're working with these organizations in these cities and the artist groups in this city. Originally, that we had an idea, okay, based on the experience that Maritis and I had, which was that guided tour by some really interesting people that we had. They took us, let's say, conference with local experts, with invited people from outside to talk about that particular place and its issues, and maybe there's a workshop and so forth. But we also feel that it doesn't have to run this way, that these groups and organizations, last discussion we had was in the meetings in Zagreb, Ljubljana, and Belgrade a month and a half ago, where many of them was that it might be better for them to do a project, organize a project, so that becomes the event, and that people participate in that. We also see the idea of that people who travel there, that is not like they're just going there to see only to see something, only to do what they want to do. Of course, they can do that, but maybe they would like to engage and collaborate in project with the people there or the organization there, or maybe they participate to help them, right? So that the idea of a traveler as a privilege becomes less, and we promote this kind of integration. And the way it sort of works is kind of like Albanian pyramid scheme number 2 and 3. The 2 is that I invite you, you can invite somebody else. You don't need to tell me who you are inviting, okay? Ultimately, everybody has to sign up on the website to register, right? And we're going to ask you some information about you, like whether you make 250,000 or you make 500,000 a year, okay? Or you could predict that you will 2 years from now. But the idea is that we want to basically decentralize as much as we can. We started this project, but we don't want to die with this project, right? Yeah.
No.
So we want to empower everybody, so to speak, right? That's what we say, self-help, so forth. But the idea is really, in a way, is to create a society. How do you make a society? Even just for a few weeks, right? So that's one way to start. But then we need a really good form of communication in real time through space, right? So that we can have this idea that anybody in the travel can contact anybody else, and anybody else can contact you, right? But since, although we have, applied for, money in all these places, but we won't know until very late, just a week before we start this, maybe? No, a couple months before. So we have to plan B, the Balkan way, with not doing things with nothing. So Todd here at CABS again, we're benefiting from the MIT expert facilities and mind here. He came up with, based on his experience, here comes another suggestion, which is that the pyramid scheme number 3, which is basically SMS mobile phone, okay? But we have to construct a kind of like a pyramid, like a tree, where one person is responsible for, let's say, 3 other person, and so that you can SMS to 3 other person, and that 3 other people SMS 3 other becomes 9, and then spreads, right? And then that when people leave in and out of the system, somebody will find on our website a graph that shows our society with numbers and people. You plug yourself into a place because you want the society to work, right? So you volunteer yourself to reconnect the society on the missing link, so, for example. So these are the kind of ways that we want. And also that we look at working in a very heuristic way. We have curators in this project. I don't know, 15 curators, and exhibition spaces ourselves, associate curators do all this work plan. People wanted to do this project very much from the beginning. But we have tendencies to look at in cultural projects from the center and think about what's going to happen already, We want to stop doing that. The idea, of course, this is not really completely true, can be worked out, but the expedition is to go into unknown territories and without much knowledge and expectations. So we want to basically limit that kind of thoughts, and so that people can really learn from the experience and not to have pre-thought idea that would limit their experiences. And the experience would give the ideas about the project that we could talk and discuss later after the expedition, and that becomes a source for the exhibitions and publication. It goes into more standard form of cultural production.
Yeah, I think
That's
we
it,
should
yeah.
leave the happily Balkanize out.
Yeah, okay, that's right. We talk too much, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Sorry.
should stop.
Yeah. Where's that thing? We got to coordinate this, right? You know what? I have to open it up first because I didn't open it up yet. The first series of photos were the ones that I took in our trip with Mariette. This is the stuff that she took. This is yours, okay.
Maybe it's enough, Kyong. No?
No, actually, this is fine. This is
Okay.
good, yeah. How do we...
So we have been showing...
And she collaborated with Serjan, and they wrote this beautiful thing, and we play a little music along with this, I think.
Okay, this is 4 minutes. Marijetica Potrećen, Serjan Jovanović.
Maybe you should just go. I think the music. Music. Professor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I was wondering how you try to mediate between the local communities and you, so to say, as the expedition would come into it.
Well, the goal is that we realized actually recently that we have been planning this project more from the outside. But at the beginning of the project, we were pretty much involved from the inside of the territory, and the ideas came from the people within. Actually, the initiation of and the whole idea of the Lost High expedition came from Belgrade, from Ivan Kuchina. So where we are at now, we want to basically blur that boundary, where we do not want to use the words like host cities. It's now in the process that we know what is meant. But once it's there, that is Europe too, and everyone is the same kind of participants. We are all, so to say, units, either individual or institutional, in a network of this society. Where, yeah.
But on the practical level, it seems difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering how do you, well, I see, like, obviously in Belgrade, in certain cities, you have probably a lot of local support and knowledge, you know, whereas in Tirana, you probably need to build that knowledge up. I don't know, I'm just wondering how you
well, initially, I mean, it started, a trip that started the whole thing. And during the time, we met a lot of people. We have contacts with significant people and groups in every city we have made. We have been in dialogue with them on and off. Not as much as we should, but it's a matter of just the structure and the way that we have had to work. First was we had to organize ourselves first, and that took like 3/4 of the year. Then we organizing in terms of like us, the exhibition spaces, and other like but it's mostly half and half from there and from elsewhere outside, right? Then the next step is that we will encounter with the people and groups in each cities. So I'll be, there in a week, and I'll be there till September, where I will be probably in every cities. And we have already started the dialogues with certain groups in Zagreb and Belgrade. We had meetings with them in Ljubljana. We actually have a plan for a conference in June, early June, first week of June, where all the representatives from all those cities and exhibition space people, everybody will get together in Ljubljana for 3 days. Okay. But it's basically that's the next step that we're going to do is to continue dialogue with them by talking on the phone, visiting them, and as writing, and have them think about ideas starting in a couple of weeks. Right? And that's how we have to work. Yeah.
And you must imagine this is like a snowball that starts a process in which we are the beginning ball, and it may stay a ball, we don't know. So, but that minimum of the critical mass is there on people who are going to travel and the institutions that would like to participate. But this can grow on this pyramidal system of I invite you, you invite other people, and so on. So these organizations that we have now in the other cities, they are for sure with us, but they are not representative of their city. It's not only their opinion that counts. Other organizations can join in, or other individuals. And it's really these people, part of them we met or knew from before. It's a personal network that is how
Also, they
you
have
have
their
to
own
start somewhere.
networks too.
But they have their own network. Partly, they are also working with each other. Already, we don't have access to all these resources present in the cities. We don't know all these people, but we count on them that they would spread out the word. And then we will do a massive advertising campaign to spread it out to others that would not necessarily be informed by these networks that we have. But we'll see, it's...
Yeah.
I was just thinking a couple of things. It's a very fascinating project, and so I was interested in a couple of things. If you're thinking about ways that you can isolate the motivating factors that do foster movement or dynamic across geographical regions, and somehow figure out a way of isolating a thumbnail, like disease, food, music, power, and looking at elements that actually motivate exchange between people, and somehow coming up with some, what you're saying, like a project-based activity, whether it's like planting a tree or some activity on site that isolates a quality or dynamic that is specific to one of these things that you're looking at, like really have why people move, why people interact, why people exchange and relocate, and I don't know if there is something as banal as like a plant, like something that is an action in the moment that then has an impact a year from now, changes again. It's climate and location specific, but is uniform across all these different locations that you visit. So you go to a location, you do the same act, but it's specific because you're in this place with these people at this time in 2006. I don't know if it's something that you could replicate that will remain distinct, but is a...
Yeah. Actually, this is on the...
already happening on this homepage that we don't want to show because it's not that mature yet. Yeah. But the idea is to, on this web page, have an infrastructure, a platform for both really communicating, and I put all my information there, can present myself. But then there's a bunch of collective projects happening, like a virtual exhibition space that is both infrastructural but also a dynamic map of the society, where different people within the research for their own project, what they want to do. And for many artists like Pia Lindman, who is a fellow here, who is coming with us, performance, for instance, is a mean of her research. So she will do some kind of probes on each site and repeat her ritual in these different cities and put that information on the web to be shared. But other projects like Marissa Yan, visual arts graduate student here, she invented this frisbee, which is a device, that's her piece of art, that involves a social game, the mean of throwing, like you would throw a grenade, but also it's a game that can cross boundaries and leave traces of seeds and let, so to say, grass or new things grow over. It's a very poetic but also socially engaging project. So there are projects like this that would leave personal traces and personal networks that we cannot grasp. Some visual material that comes out of that we will have on the web, what they are willing to give us. Other projects, for instance, through Ted Hirsch, who is a graduate fellow here, we came to do the pirating of the Google map, where it's really fascinating. America is, you can Google it and you see the whole, streets and everything. You can find each location. Europe and the Balkans is tabula rasa. There's nothing.
There's just a little section in northern Italy.
Yeah, there's just a geographical outline. So our participants, by mapping and doing the projects, will start, there's a module that you can put over. So they are creating a collective map of locating things, real things with GPS, or imaginary things. So it's a collective map of the future and subjective one. So there are projects like this, and this can go into wide range of becoming like a Craigslist of informal yellow pages where I can sleep in a certain place and for cheap and do car sharing and travel from one place to another, or advertise a restaurant and here's the best food, but I can also start exchanging recipes and so on. So this is really dependent on the participants. We have established a couple of categories that we find interesting as initiation, but I think this will progress with the participants.
Yeah, we don't know how well that it would work, but it all depends on you. But it brings out an interesting case where there are many artists that, this is a very traditional practice that artists get into, like you have an idea, and you have your kind of way of doing it, right? Your medium or something like that. And this is a case where, understandable, you go into school, you're in the market, you want to be successful, so you have to have your thing, right? And so you go to the Balkan with the idea of applying this, whether it's a Frisbee or whether it's something else, okay? I'm not saying against it, but there's also concern from our part that whether that is the kind of right approach, in relation with what's there. It may work, but I think that we give a little maybe question mark to that kind of approach, for example. Because, frankly, you could do that anywhere, So what would be specific? We think, the WB is a very special place and needs a very special attention, right? Then you have we have thought beginning of an issue about, for instance, who decides, let's say, okay, people can start things on their own, generate an idea, even create a group and funding for it and blah, blah. Totally independent, right? But who decides what will be shown in the exhibition, published, and blah, blah. Right? Would that be the curators? Would that be like us, the Centrala? Right? Or would it be the people who are in this society? Right? So one of the things that beginning of that's what we've been developing, how you do that. Right? And one of the first things is that, I don't know whether there was some technical problem, but we applied to a funding that we may not get it because we had technical problem, but the idea was good, which is that we would grant like €1,000 research grant for about 25 people, right? So that people decide among themselves. They put up the idea, they put up their background, and then it's kind of self-voted somehow. Of course, voting is pretty stupid, but maybe we can find a better way, more dialogue than that, just simply voting. Those are things that we're trying to further develop in how that it could be self-determined, which is the way the internet is. It's self-regulated, except the state wants to control it, but it's a self-regulated, self-governed society, And in a lot of ways this Lost Highway, Alpha and all that, is really reflecting and trying to embody a lot of those characteristics of behavior, whether it's the internet or whether it's the other forms of fragmentations and self-generating. So like, for instance, so one thing that we didn't read.
Maybe I should get more questions.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I would.
Let's get more.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Short question on building on the current Balkan culture. And I came also from a background where, as in these women, the famous within Balkan singers. And in Concord, just 3 weeks ago, every year, there's a conference, and it's a fun conference. It's lots of music and dancing, and it is called the Balkan Folk Conference. There's some variation of that. So adding some of that life, that country vitality of the villages, perhaps even having some of those perform the women's chorus or whatever, having them sort of include their little spot of where they originated from, and then add some of the actual current culture that is musical and rhythmic, and there's instruments, and there's even the rhythm of the dancing, even if we don't show the actually didn't have the footage of the dancing, but just as an enrichment to the experience.
Yeah, this is definitely, we want, there was at one point the idea to have a Balkan project, a whole Balkan project, and to connect, because Balkans was in the fashion for a couple of years, and now it's actually falling down, which doesn't mean that this a region, whatever is it defined, is still very interesting for further research and could be learned from. So at this point, we want to actually learn from the experiences and knowledge from all these larger projects that were happening before us, involve them into ours. But you must consider that this is not a regular curatorial process where we are determining exactly what's happening. And it's, of course, beautiful to involve these projects, but if they want to, because we are not going to be directors of an enormous festival. This is really already expanding and getting out of our control. And that is what we want. But we want to, let it go and at a certain point just become artists and do our projects. And once the system is established, then it is running. And we are running a part of this section with the money that we have applied for. But this same kind of model can be applied by anyone else. You can take over and ally yourself with us or with someone else and make your own projects within this. But we are all bound with this same umbrella.
Right, like your case, there can be connection with like events, mutually happening in similar time or same places, or information shared so that people get to know the other, and that way it connects, right? But we, like, for example, the people, in theory, right, that people can present, develop their own project. Put it up on the website. Right now it's www.europelostandfound.net. It's very premature because the system that we have is to be open now for several months, and then we will structure it based on the, what kind of contents are being put in. Then the people, let's say you have an idea and you put up an idea, and some people find it interesting, or some people find it that it's bad, they criticize you, and blah, blah. That's the way we see it kind of working. There are other organizations like Balkan Black Box in Berlin, and Temple Bar in Dublin. Who else? There are a bunch of organizations that are already aware and they're interested, but they will work more independently. Actually, Strom in Den Haag as well. That they might define their own project, right? And then you have a kind of a collective pool of works that we could pull in to produce a post-production work of exhibition or something, or conference. They also could, invite us, some of us, one of us, or so forth. So the events and organization also can go in and out, just like the Lost Highway itself works. That's how we hope that it will work out. Yeah.
One more question?
Yeah, or however, if people want to go and please, we are happy we get a lot of questions, but we are already so long, so don't feel bad if you have to leave us. But who wants to ask, please? Yes.
I wanted to say that I understand why you wouldn't want to engage all the dancers from the countryside first in this project, because maybe paradoxically the cities are the only force of territorial cohesion there, and this religious and paramilitary takeover of the states that we know as balkanization has its basis there, so you don't want to play with that if you want to turn balkanization upside down into a positive concept. But also I see that in your project there are some dangerous points that might play into either this or into viewing this tour as the ironic survey of the bizarre countryside. So I wanted to address these issues and see what you plan to prevent this. First of all, there is a touristy element of the entire thing that stems from the great economic inequalities between the hosts and the guests, and also from the very structure of the enterprise, which consists of taking pictures, photographs of bizarre things from an ironic standpoint. I mean, I know this is not your intention here, but this is the
It can happen, yeah.
Yeah, so it can be some kind of fancy tourism. And fancy in the sense that it can also be a groupie thing, because it's about creating a society, and if that society has no content and no way to represent itself, then it's just groupieism, or however you call it. But if you find ways for that society to self-represent in a very smart and thought-out way, then that can be correct. So, like, what are we doing to prevent this from becoming groupie?
A groovy thing, or a naive walk on the landmine project.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, okay, let's start with the first thing is that there are several things after our trip seeing the projects. There were three major exhibitions of visual art about the Balkan in the last 3 years. Harold Zeman and René Bloch and who's the guy at Karlsruhe? But there was three major exhibitions. Basically, EU has the money. The artists in the Balkan needs money. EU wants new artists. And the Western Balkan has not been tapped. So it's a mutual arrangement. They want to get out to the Europe, international, exposure. The problem with down there is extreme isolation. People can't travel, not even within the former Yugoslav, right? So that there is a benefit to that, and we realize this. We also realize that there is exoticism, romanticism about the Balkan from the outside, and also there is self-victimization from the inside.
And self-orientalism.
Yeah, and self-organization. Yeah. So it's not so simple, right? And then then you have this tourist thing, right? So one of the things is that when I had a meeting in Berlin with the Balkan Black Box people, right? And they were like asking various questions. What do I do when I get there first thing, And then I wanted to say, well, I don't know. Of course it's a little harsh, but there was a way of we talked a lot about not giving too much information at all, right? So that people don't come in with idea that they're going to be served, that there is an event, there is exactly everything planned, right? That gets into automatically, bit of a tourism, no matter what, And so we thought, maybe we just make it more difficult. Then, only the serious people will come, right? I'm not sure what the final strategy would be, but one of the direction now is that people, maybe what happens is that people themselves construct information before people go there. And once again, that we now need to get people from the area more involved in this project so we can make 50-50, so there is no longer distinction between travelers and the host. We think that the people in the ex-Yugo and Albania would be just as interested to travel the other section of that area they haven't visited for 20-some years, for example, right? That's really very, a very typical situation there. So this is the one way we don't have a complete, solution to. But what it means is that in spite that we say some things like here, border as creative space, blah blah, we're going into this groovy anti-state, rhetorics and issues. But I think that we're beginning to see that we have a border of ourselves that we're making, Do we accept anybody in the society? Everybody, anybody, right? Do we make ourselves complete replica of the society that exists? If we are going to make a different society, then I think there is some kind of an idea that a border has to maybe start developing, and who gets to come in, who doesn't, who comes in and gets expelled, might happen. And how do we do this? We need to figure this out. We don't have an answer now. That's, yeah.
And also, I think important point in this is that really people from the non-West Balkan people are coming from the outside in, but the same amount of people from the inside is traveling. That's a third point. And these kinds of representations is, this is our selling material to get people enthusiastic and interested. But it's also, these were our personal projects. All of the slides we've been showing today is basically our group project. Each one of us in our initiating group has contributed with text. We are working together on text, on slides and everything. So that's that. I think the important point, rather than collecting some kind of exotic data material, is really to throw yourself in experience that you don't know, the territory that's unfamiliar to you and where you are possibly scared to go. And you are dependent on other people, and you start, and you are responsible for other people. Just think of this text message system. If you don't send it out, you may throw, like a whole branch of the society will not know that certain thing is happening there. So I think these issues are much more important to try to initiate there, the communication and trust that has been lost. That's what I would like to.
If I add that's one thing that was very important for us was that we actually just want to deal with the future. We don't want to deal with the war. We don't want to go into the past, unless if the past does have a good historian, I guess. A lot of you are, I guess. I don't know, I'm just a naive guy. I guess, reinterpretation of the past to the interest and benefit of the future, right? That we're interested in that. But we recognize there has been a lot of great research projects so far, artistic research projects. But we want to benefit from that, we want to build from that, and we want to go to the future. We don't want to dwell on the horrors of the Balkan War, and the guilt of EU not doing or defending, or what is going on now in terms of economic interest going south and so forth. It's a mutual benefit. Not all aspects of globalization is bad. It allows the possibility of balkanizations to occur, because that is the reaction that globalizing reaction of a smaller fragmented movement organizing among themselves, but still staying independent. But I think it has a very much its own behavior of globalization as well. So we have basically some of these frameworks that we have thought about in rough sense.
Yeah, I think we forgot to say this point, no?
Yeah, although there, yeah.
Yeah, this is important because we want to encourage projects that are not only reflective. It's not, data gathering and representing what you find there and visualizing it in a pretty diagrams, but more making contemplations of the future. And for that, you use the present and the past, of course, in your research and your understanding. But we really want models for the future. That's what should come out of this project.
I think there was
Yeah.
one more.
I just have one short reaction to, I mean, you're talking about going to the future and not using past or dwelling in it. But first, I can't really, like you said, or dwell on the economic situation right now. But when I see these photos, all I see is Numerish criminals who have built these fortresses on the bodies of dead people. And what I see is exactly the economic structure of the Balkans that is what causes most of the problems. So I'm not saying that you're not correct in creating something new, and you don't know what that new is, but I'm saying that was my reaction to those slides. So I would say documentation of this trip, at least up to this point, has channeled me into thinking that. And I hope that maybe there are other ways to document it. It's hard to document, of course, but that would instigate less of that retrospective, maybe. And because that's what my reaction was. So maybe, I don't know.
To which
The specifically slides, the first slides, Zagreb, Belgrade, Skopje,
Oh,
Pristina.
you mean this? Okay.
Yeah, like the houses,
That's
you know, the villas, as you call it, the urban villas. I mean,
So-
they have a specific cultural meaning among a lot of people in the Balkans, and I'm sure you know this, but I have a very negative reaction to them because they're not just expression of Balkanization, they're expression of violence.
The beginning series of images was the one that you felt the most.
Not all of them, but
and the Balkan
specifically
villa,
urban villas.
the urban villas.
Interesting. Why? Could you be a little more specific? What kind of feeling that you got out?
Because people who built them are not you and me. People who built them were the people who were in cahoots, as they would say, with those who have perpetrated
We wouldn't
war.
have the money.
They wouldn't have money unless, right.
Right.
Well, I think that we have to look at it. It's difficult to say because I'm an outsider, right? And I get the benefit of looking at things new, but maybe not clear. You see? Right.
Maybe like
Yeah.
Well, maybe they have been thrown in here all together. We have done different kinds of research that we were unfortunately able to show in full depth here. Not by myself, but by Marijetica Potrč and Srđan Jovanović, documenting different types of urban villas, like the Silicon Valley and the Dolina, kako se kaže? The valley of the thieves.
Yeah.
From a very critical perspective, and this documentation, means to show what is going on and what are these people doing. At the same time, similar housing typology, you find it in Bosnia, on the countryside where refugees are coming back, or people, the former guest workers, copying maybe the same model. And this is not necessarily to put all these people into the same pot, but it allows you a reading of a new society that is not having a directed planning from above, but is building its own economy from below. What these people have done is very different and very specific in different locations, and for that we have different projects. But what is interesting is the mean of occupation of public space, just taking over land, building a fence, putting a flag on, and building up for your clan structure with the self-provided business in the bottom. That comes from that. And you are definitely right, but we ourselves are not going to be working on projects like this. This is the survey of the land that we want to present how it looks there to, present to people who are not coming from there. And from our point, what we see interesting in there. But we want actually projects for the future. So, yes, please.
This is a good point to.
Oh, I would just like my
One
more
last, yeah.
We can almost continue this in a more unofficial structure if you wanted to, but
I'll be brief.
Okay,
Just in light of the
brief and sharp.
in light of the last two questions, I felt that one needs to go back and perhaps actually highlight what I feel is conceptual paradoxes in what you have been presenting. And the two last questions have highlighted some of them. But if it's a project for the future, then you have to be aware where you are standing. And the idea that the past is not part of your experience, of course, makes you claim that you are an outsider, and therefore ignorance of what's happening in there doesn't really allow you to use it as a tabula rasa to move into the future. It seems to me that the past is very important, and you cannot really claim that you are addressing the future without a fair understanding of the past, and perhaps actually taking a position vis-a-vis the past. And in a sense, I'm looking at the way the project has been presented, and I'm feeling to myself, a highway is a thing of the past. A highway is something that has a beginning and end, it has an aim. It's in most cases, highways have been imperial projects, have been projects actually that brought people together, not because the people wanted to be brought together, but because some external force has decided that they ought to be brought together and consequently excluded some other people from being part of the highway. I like your SNS idea of a network that actually goes out, and perhaps instead of a highway, and if you are really futuristic, you should start thinking about a network, about a beginning point that is totally undecided and you don't know how it's going to branch out, rather than sort of like the linearity that is imposed in the highway. And the other thing is, again, in the idea of the past, you are accepting Balkanization. You are accepting the Balkan as it is by presenting us with what is being called the West Balkan. Perhaps actually a challenge is to say that the border is not from Ljubljana down to Tirana or down to the border of Greece, but actually Greece is part of it, or Italy is part of it, so that you allow yourself to break away from the pattern of what has happened and the idea of these criminals that have been presented to us. Perhaps you bring us other examples of social exploitation, of economic exploitations that could be parallel rather than actually focusing on one and ignoring what the reason of that social and economic exploitation that we were seeing in the examples that you showed were basically war. That is very specific, and therefore you have to be specifically engaging that past in order to be able to move to your future.
Yeah, that was a very concise question. Okay, then I will respond. I think you're absolutely right on every point of that, and I couldn't agree with it really more on it. But maybe I exaggerated about my denouncement of the past.
Yeah.
And I did it because that perhaps because there just have been so much over fascinations with the past, and especially recent past of ex-Yugoslavia, for example, right? And that I continue to see this in a cultural project, and especially in the policy areas and conferences, that it just kind of, I feel that we should just kind of move on, and to look to the future a little bit more. Maybe that's what I should have said. And I think that people, especially in the southern part of the Western Balkan, which is, by the way, politically, it's Yugoslav minus Slovenia plus Albania. They are much more oriented to the future now, given the potential to build their life for some time in Kosovo in a very limited time, afraid that this time would close up on them. And I realize that there are dirty laundry money coming to be able to build these bricks. But there are also, as Azra said, that it's also other people are participating as well on this kind of eclectic self-expression of their ideas. But we are interested in presenting those things, those dirts as well, because they are part of, at least that's maybe my personal opinion, part of the context of the situation there. And so I think I forgot a lot of your other great criticism, but I have a tape so I could study them afterwards and try to improve myself and to be to be an acceptable outsider. But I'm always outsider everywhere I go, so it's no problem with me.
I think the point that you brought up, the breaking away from the pattern, that's, I think, what we are very confused about, how to dock on that, and that, how to engage and disengage from the past at the same time, because we are moving through area where people do not want to maybe communicate with each other at all, but should. I mean, we have managed in our group to find to each other through our work. We have been brought together by personal networks and because we work on similar issues. And we hope that that kind of dialogue will be established as we go along the highway. And the highway, yeah? Yeah.
Well, what you balkanized yourself?
We did.
Like if you started speaking different languages from the West.
That's the motto.
Is that the idea?
The Balkanize Yourself motto?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Is that part of the...
Oh, that's right, the highway, that was a good, big question. Yeah. You gotta get back on that one. You were
Okay.
about to answer about the highway. It's a bad idea because it starts from one place, ends at another place. It's usually by a dominant institution, especially now as a part of Corridor 10 of the EU strategies to expand itself all the way to, I think almost to Vladivostok, But anyway, you want to, maybe you had some idea about the highway.
Yeah, I think the beginning is not clear yet of this highway. The ending of the highway is clear for us, that it's undetermined. So it's this endlessly growing network that can basically also take over the world, and the world can be connected by 6 people. But the beginning, I think, yes, this is an issue, and this is the present. But somewhere you have to start. So we started from the goal, and the goal was to get the rhizome of individuals networking. And so you just stick your finger in that, and that's the beginning point that will generate the rest. That's our hope, at least, systematically speaking. Politically speaking, it is something that still needs further discussion in our group, because we are all coming from, I have been to Belgrade first time after the war for the New Year's, and it was very important and a learning experience for me but it is very difficult at the same time, to open up yourself against prejudices and fears that you have been informed over a long period of time, learn about the other. And in our group, we have managed it so far. How we will transfer this to others, I hope this really will go through these personal networks. The highway is a placebo to stage and localize and these events. But we are not following the whole line. The original highway was just going like 4 cities. We are extending it.
We're not really that interested in the highway of brotherhood and unity, that people have to drive on that thing, that they can go anywhere, any way they want. I think that we're looking at the highway, that there was, yes, it was a political propaganda at the moment, of course. Not everything is, including the Walmart today. They're going to support their competitors around them. It's a new strategy. So it gets very complex, and but there was like people who believed it individually. There were like Anna's father, 14. He lied about his age to join it, and he talks about it. And then now we have this highway of emptiness, so to speak, like any other highway. So what we may be thinking, at least this would be my opinion, is that this is not the same kind of highway. This is a highway, the actual physical form, maybe like rhizomatic, but it's a mental highway to move, to change, and to evolve. That's the highway that I would like to think about, But that's my opinion, and others have disagreed with that.
And yeah. Sure. Thank you very much.
Yeah.